What's up, Yeggs? That's one of my favorite old-timey terms. I love them all, but pretty much whenever I say one or one pops into my mind, that's just my favorite one for that time and place. And this video is gonna there's a pretty dark story I covered a couple months ago in this series that kind of treads similar water to this one in terms of the overall outcome, as opposed to what was expected or desired that led to the actions in this story taking place. But you know, when you're doing a daily vlog, finding stories, sometimes you're gonna just have crossover over time. And today's story is gonna be about some Yeggs. I wasn't just saying that for the hell of it. So anyway, today is July 16th, 2021. I'm on my way home from work and just figured, what the hey, perfect time and opportunity to vlog a wee bit as I venture away from the proud workplace. But before we get to today's story, remember, as always, if you're new, you haven't done it yet, whatever your excuse is, you lazy worm, remember to, it's a good way to get people to like your channel. Remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And I've got a Patreon out there. I'm trying to post multiple times a week. Lots of extra content that is only available if you become a Patreon supporter now. Even if you only got $1 to give, you'll have access to all that stuff. The link to that is in the description with this video, as well as the link to my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and my Reddit subreddit pages. So all that said, as I said, let's talk about some Yeggs. This freaking office chair is still here. You may have seen this. I believe it was in yesterday's This Day in History video. I think. I could be wrong. If I am, you may have not seen this yet because it may be a future video. Whatever the case, either before already or after this video, this is gonna make a cameo in one of my videos. It's just still sitting here. Only sitting there till a few Yeggs come along. All right, so anyway, it's like the 15th time I've said that word. What is a Yegg? I remember there was an old Warner Brothers cartoon that was called Easter Yeggs. And I thought, okay, they're just trying to appease kids. So they misspelled eggs on purpose. But a Yegg is an actual thing. A Yegg is kind of slang for a safecracker. Someone who breaks open safes, tries to access the loot that is within. So, yep, that's a Yegg. And I don't know where the term came from. So now that I think about it, for your benefit, I mean, as well as mine, because I think maybe I'm more curious than you are, I want to find out where the origin is for that specific term for safecrackers. So I'm going to bring that definition to you, or not the definition, I already gave you that, but the origin to where that particular slang term came from. I'm going to bring that to you now. So a Yegg, as I understand it, I read that in one source that Yegg was kind of an alteration of the word yekk, Y-E-K-K, that apparently was used around Chinatowns, as I read it. And yekk pretty much meant beggar, which makes sense because it seems like Yeggs are kind of considered to be like tramp thieves, transient thieves, even though there's a main focus on safe cracking. But I guess it kind of has this lineage that, like, it was usually like more poor, kind of desperate people that did it, is kind of the vibe I'm getting. They were also referred to as Yeggmen. I think before they were just kind of referred to more often as Yeggs. You know, why say a long word when a shorter word does just as well? So I also saw there was one source that said apparently like someone had safe cracked and stolen a bunch of money from a bank, pretty big, like a big national bank, I believe in Minnesota, and then ended up returning all the money that he'd taken. And they were advised in a letter to not admit that some random transient safecracker had worked them over like this, because they were supposed to be a big prestigious bank, and you didn't get ripped off by little Yeggs like this. So they were influenced to say that like there was another reason why this money disappeared. And apparently the individual that wrote that letter It wasn't his real last name, but he used the pseudonym of Yegg. He used Yegg as his last name. So there's a lot of little interesting pieces to the origin of Yegg terminology. So there you go. The more you know. History. You're welcome. So the Brandes, or Brands, maybe the E was silent, I'm gonna call it Brandes. The Brandes Creamery Company, which makes me think they made ice cream or just cream of various sorts. Cream for your coffee, ice cream, cream of mushroom soup. I'm really doing a good job of losing my appetite right now. But this place was located on 1st Street, 137 1st Street, which this story does predate 1930, so it would have had a different address. So instead of 137, it was something else. But I'll show, if I can find an image of what that area looks like, or if even an image of the actual creamery business itself, I'll put it here. Otherwise, if I can't, I'll at least put an image of what the area looks like today from Google imagery. So now that you know what that area generally looked like, I'm trying to keep this sun out of my face. That place was the next destination for a group of Yeggs that had apparently ripped off multiple locations in Portland. They'd ripped off another nearby office building. They'd ripped off a place that was simply described as a coffee house, which I don't know if coffee house back in the day, it would have the same meaning as it does today, because today it's the place you go to get coffee. I would assume it's pretty comparable back then, but you never know with history and the way they like to play with words. So now these guys were professionals. They were the real deal. They'd managed to successfully, without issue, rip off these other places. And it was about 3 a.m. when they broke into the Brandes Creamery on 1st. And the only reason they were discovered was, as is often the case in a lot of these old stories, was there were so many patrolmen that just walked to their beat. Not many of them were traveling around in cars. So you would, they'd be walking around, and sometimes there was just an officer at the right place at the right time. And there was an officer passing the place when he heard a loud thud inside, which may have been, I don't know, the sound of the safe inside the building blowing. Could have been a lot of things, but probably was directly connected to what was going on inside. So he rushed to the front entrance to see what was going on, and he noticed at that point that there was smoke like billowing from the back area of the place. So he may have thought that there was actually a fire going on, when there wasn't. It was just kind of the smoke and whatnot from the safe getting blown open. And so this officer at the scene, he summons whoever is around. He sees a couple streetcar dudes. There's not a lot of people. There's some people, but there's not a lot of people out at 3 a.m. So he manages to summon over anyone he can get. He sends some around towards the back, sends another one to go call a police station to get more people there. And this patrolman himself finally gets up and kicks the door in. Now, by this point, by the time he gains entry, starts making his way through the smoke and all that, the Yeggs in question have already broken out the back side of the place. And when the area where the safe was cracked in this business successfully, once it was successfully cracked and they get in there, they realize that like all the equipment that these guys had brought with them to break that safe had been left behind. Another sign that these guys were professionals. If someone's getting close to you and the heat's coming on, leave with as little extra crap on you as possible, which I could learn a thing or two from, because this bag is always full. So they left with what they came to get, and left nothing but their equipment, which was not the same as being apprehended there and being arrested. So they got away with another sleek yegging, or I don't know, another successful robbery of a safe of a business, and the authorities still didn't know who they were in that moment. In addition to that, because authorities, or at least this one officer who got others to help him, the fact that they got there so quickly, they were pretty much the moment the safe was blown, they were there. The money in the safe actually hadn't been taken either. So in addition to leaving their equipment behind, these guys actually left the money. They were like, there was apparently only $21 in the safe. That's the twist, is that these guys were serious professionals about what they did, and yet they broke into a place and cracked a safe. They used like nitroglycerin, like they used the real stuff. And you know, the business they came to only had 21 bucks in their safe, which they left behind because they had to flee. The only cash they took was what they found in the till. And the only guy that was apprehended was a guy named Pete Zarara, which is a great last name, who was loitering in the area, and the patrolman on the scene noticed him and thought, oh, interesting, I hear this noise and there's this guy loitering out here at 3 a.m. Wonder what he's up to. Now, alas, this fellow that was found loitering outside, and quickly authorities figured was probably a lookout for the guys inside. Of course, the officer gave him a good dressing down, figured out what his name was, which was probably beneficial because he maybe never would have seen the guy again had he not done that. Because he had the guy there, but he had to, assess the matter at hand, which was the robbery that was taking place. So he pretty much was like, you stay right here, you don't go anywhere. And of course, the moment he left to address what was going on at the creamery place, this Zarara guy, took off. But fortunately, they knew his name. And as it said, they were able to track him down to a hotel along Burnside Street, which even to this day, there's a lot of old hotels along Burnside Street. So, narrowing down which one it might have been, a lot of hotels that would have been around way back when this story took place are still there. There's no way to know exactly for sure which one it was. So while these experts in their field did manage to get away in the aftermath of all this, the guy who was probably their lookout man was apprehended. Now, was he gonna talk? Was he gonna rat him out? Who's to say? I know I could research it and say for certain, but that's not the way this series works most of the time. So they at least had a guy that was probably directly connected, so that may have led to the apprehension of these fellows. So there was that negative connotation, even though for the moment the guys had escaped. The other twist was they had to run so quickly, they left the 21 bucks behind in the safe, which even back then, big deal, 21 bucks. So, they still managed to come away with what was in the tills for the business. So they still got something. $2. They managed to come away with $2 when all was said and done. So, even if the thing had been a wholehearted success, they would have come away with $23, including that safe money. So, these guys knew how to conduct themselves. They had the right material, the right supplies. They usually, for the most part, knew how to do this and get away with it. But it seems like either they were given a bad lead on this creamery, or they just foolishly saw it and presumed there's good money to be had in that establishment, because they broke in, they almost got caught, their lookout may for a fact have been caught, and it was all worth $2 when all is said and done. I was kind of hearkening back to when I said at the start of this, like I kind of covered similar ground in another video in this series. There was a video I did about a woman who was brutally murdered because these young criminals thought that she had this big stack of money in her house, and I think they came away with less than $1. So that story was a lot more brutal because it involved the violent murder of someone over some money that wasn't even there. But there's still that correlation, going in expecting to find something big and walking out with nothing, except unlike that story, these guys were seemingly professionals who should have known what they were doing. And in this case, somebody dropped the ball, or they were given bad intel. Something went astray when all was said and done. And that is the story of a couple of expert yeggs that came away with $2 during a rather successful string of robbing places. You can't win them all. So that's that story. Another story completed. I'd like to thank you so much for stopping by and taking it in with me. I'm posting these things daily, so there's always a chance every day to get something out of me, some random story like this. So I'd like to thank you all so much for joining me today, for supporting this channel, for supporting this series, for supporting me. And if you haven't done it again, or you're new to the channel, what have you, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. Again, still a lot of stuff up there for you to see. Extra stuff you can only see if you become a supporter today. The link to that is in the description with this video, as well as links to my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, subreddit. Now that said, as I approach my home, it's been Steve the Amateur Historian. I'll see you tomorrow.